What are you afraid of being judged about? Whatever it is, are you afraid that if someone finds out, they will no longer want to be your friend or coworker or family member or spouse? We've all done things that we're not particularly proud of. And by the way, I'm not looking at anybody in particular. So if I catch your eye, I'm not saying you've done something wrong and I'm taking you to task. But we've all done something that we're not particularly proud of, decisions that go against our values, actions that we knew before we did them, that we knew were wrong, secrets that we hold and think that if only somebody knew, they wouldn't want us around them anymore. Maybe thoughts that we're worthless or unlovable keep in because of the shame we carry for whatever those actions were. Guilt that becomes heavier over time, and those thoughts can linger. Maybe even something eventually comes to light, and maybe it's a huge deal, maybe it isn't that big of a deal, but whatever it is, embarrassment, shame, and fear over what happened can threaten to break us. But what if those people that you were afraid of judging you, what if they offered you compassion and love and help instead of condemnation, judgment, and abandonment? What kind of difference would that make in your life? It would make all the difference. There's no question. It would make all the difference. From John 8, 2 through 12. Early in the morning, Jesus came again down to the temple, and all the people came to him, and he sat down and he began to teach them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery. And making her stand before all of them, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now in the law of Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. Now what do you say?" They said this to test him, so that they might have some charges to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. And when they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And once again, he bent down and wrote on the ground. When they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the elders. And Jesus was left alone with a woman standing before him. Jesus straightened up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, sir." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go away, and from now on, do not sin again." What a fascinating little story. To better understand it, let's back up for just a bit. If it feels like a trap, guess what? It is. They were definitely trying to entrap Jesus. That's made pretty clear. Jesus and the Pharisees have been having some confrontational interactions for a while. In chapter 7, they were noted to have sent some temple police after Jesus, but instead of those temple police arresting him, they listened to what he had to say, and they were so impressed by it and influenced by the things that he had to say, they went back to the Pharisees and said, "We couldn't arrest him. He's like no one we've ever heard before." So these Pharisees, they were getting a little bit more and more desperate to catch Jesus in some kind of sedition or breaking Jewish laws or advocating for things that he wasn't supposed to advocate for, so they could arrest him and use his words against him. It's worth noting, though, that not all of the Pharisees felt this way, but most did, and they were getting more and more afraid of the influence that Jesus was having. So we step into this story knowing those little details, and we realize that it feels like a setup because it is. These men of incredible authority and power decide to drag this poor woman in and use her as a means of catching Jesus. Did you hear that? To use her. We have no idea what her story is. We don't know the state of her marriage. We don't know if she was even a willing participant in this alleged adultery. We don't even know if she even committed adultery. Through this action, they dismiss her humanity and her dignity, and they objectify her so that this sin is the only thing about her that matters. And Jesus isn't having it. He pauses, he runs his fingers through the dirt, fatigued by the incessant ridiculousness of those who should know better, trying to calm his anger at their use of this woman, waiting to gather his thoughts before he says something that maybe he shouldn't. And the Pharisees, they lean in, smug. Can't you just feel it? Smug at their self-righteousness and hypocrisy. The crowd is watching, holding their breath, waiting to see what Jesus would say and do. Maybe a few of them already have the rocks in their hands. The woman who hasn't spoken yet, completely terrified that she could die on this morning. The tension, friends, is palpable. And Jesus sits there and he plays in the dirt, dismissing both the attempt to entrap him and dismissing the charge pressed upon this woman. And then Jesus asks them one question. Who here hasn't ever sinned? It's not just a way to get out of a tricky situation. It's a way of reminding them of the mercy and grace they have received in their own lives. It's a way to say her sin isn't what really matters about this woman. It's a way of him saying, you know what? The worst thing we've ever done, it doesn't define us. It's a way to say that the focus should not be on her sin, but on their own reflections of their own sin. Judgment is a powerful action. We've all felt it, and we've all done it. Jesus is reminding us, too, that in our faith there is no room for the condemnation of others. I read a story earlier this week about this psychology professor who asks her students to write, "What do you fear the most?" 40% of them said that they fear Christians. They fear Christians. And Marcus Borg, who was a New Testament scholar and professor in Oregon, shared in his book, The Heart of Christianity, that he asked his non-Christian students to write an essay about their impressions about Christians. And he said they consistently use 5 adjectives. Are y'all ready? Christians are literalistic, anti-intellectual, self-righteous, judgmental, and bigoted. I don't have anything to say about that, really. Friends, that's worth some internal reflection. How do we contribute to this fear and judgment? What must we start doing to help create a different narrative? Because pointing the finger at other Christians is not going to do anybody any good. Well, that's them, that's not me. Except to remember, we've all participated in the judgment of others. The story of Jesus Christ is not one to fear. John 3:17 reminds us that Jesus came not to condemn the world, but to save it. And how does he do that? Well, in this story, he shows us what mercy is and then extends it to us and expects us to then extend it to others. We can imagine the relief this woman felt at Jesus' response to her. She was on death row and had been set free. That is mercy. It is mercy that transformed this confrontation and every single person that participated in it. None of those people, whether they had rocks in their hand or not, could walk away without being deeply affected by what Jesus had asked of them. Another commentary I read this week shared that much of Jesus' teachings were grounded in the understanding of the Torah. However, many of his actions called for reinterpreting the law. As we wrestle with our own rules, we should ask, what is the most just, merciful, and faithful interpretation? The Bible has been used and abused and continues to be so. What is the most just, merciful, and faithful interpretation is a wonderful perspective that grounds us in the love of God before we interpret and reinterpret the text for our own lives. Go and sin no more is more than just a moral statement. It's a way of interpreting a set of laws through the lens of mercy. Whatever rules we have, whatever rules, laws we have, whatever traditions we have, Jesus is giving us the opportunity here to realize that every one of them can have mercy, justice, and faithfulness at the heart of all of them. We're reminded by another scholar that the inconvenience of mercy, because it is inconvenient, we think it's great when it's extended to us. It becomes pretty darn inconvenient when we're supposed to pass it on. The inconvenience of mercy is that it's hardly ever merited. Mercy, unmerited, inadvisably offered, and brimming with foolish hope, is the making of a Christ follower. She says, I doubt Jesus would talk so much about forgiveness and mercy if it were easy. God tends to repeat what we struggle to listen to. No, she says, mercy is brutal. Mercy, my friends, can never be earned. It must be freely given, and when it is transformational for everyone. But it's not easy. It is the intentional work of faith. It is the practice of hope. It is the work of justice, because without mercy, justice is just retribution. It is knowing that there is more in the world than what hurts us or how we have hurt others. It's what we ask for when we know we have messed up, when we know we have messed up our relationships, when we know we have done wrong and hurt others. It is how we know that God is present and joyfully at work within each one of us. One pastor wrote that mercy is what makes us God's own. And friends, you are God's own. You are God's own. You are God's own and have experienced already in your life God's mercy. God's love and mercy is rooted in you so deep that it can't ever be taken out. And that, my friends, is the good news that we share together today. Amen.